Good morning, Tom. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Patrick. How's it going?
Really well, thanks. And I think one thing that we have to say straight away is that we are looking at each other on video, which at this time of the morning, I'm not sure is a particularly pleasant experience.
Yeah, 9:30 for a podcast recording on video was a bit aggressive, but it's Monday morning as well, so we'll see how we go.
And I was saying to you before, I have the ghostly complexion of someone who hasn't seen the sun for an entire Lancashire winter almost. So as we do more of these video/podcasts, hopefully I'll pick up a bit of sun and it'll be more pleasant for everyone.
Yeah, we'll say maybe in post the UC Today team can make us all look like Greek Adonises with tans and stacked, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, applying tan retrospectively is a key factor. But Tom, I've been watching your adventures on Twitter over the sort of Christmas holidays, and as we come now to the end of January, it's been an incredibly busy time for the Microsoft stack and Teams and Skype for Business, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And normally, like you'd think of January as quiet, like everybody, kind of winds down a bit in December. Therefore, there's nothing dropping in January. But part of this kind of agile, continuous world, a whole bunch of news and features and new hardware has dropped in January. So there's actually a lot to talk about this month.
And I thought for our first pod video of 2019, we'd shift it up a bit and let's start with Skype for Business. So Server 2019, have there been some more updates on that?
Yeah, so not 2019. 2019 still GA, but 2015, Link 2013, and Link 2010 have all got patches. So again, Microsoft, all the marketing is on Microsoft Teams, Cloud, Future. But actually, from a patching and keeping things maintained perspective, there are new patches for all those platforms. No massive new features, no surprises there, just lots of updates and security fixes. The only slight feature change is a smoother ability to move users directly from Skype server to Microsoft Teams. But good to see the servers are being looked after and maintained and everything else. And then unsurprisingly, the one feature addition is let's make it easier for you to move from server to the cloud.
Oh, right, that makes perfect sense. And as we always say on the pods, it is really important, isn't there? Because there's still a huge customer base that are utilizing these platforms, and Microsoft's continued commitment to updating those and patching those is really important to a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the vast majority of enterprise voice telephony seats for Microsoft are still on Skype Business Server. So it is a very important platform for lots and lots of customers. And it's not going anywhere anytime soon for lots of customers. So knowing that it's being looked after and maintained and supported is really important.
And in terms of, just from your opinion, do you think coming up through the year we're likely to see any radical updates to the platforms? We're probably not, are we? It's going to be a case of maintaining, and then, as you said, some of those migration features to Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. There will be no big features for server. There'll be some stuff has already been promised on server 2019. So some administration changes. They're improving the admin console. So there's some incrementals still being produced there for customers that are on those platforms. But it's not like WebRTC is suddenly going to turn up in Skype Business Server or anything else kind of revolutionary. It's very much in a kind of maintenance and improvement cycle now.
Okay, well, let's get on to the main development platform, which is, of course, Microsoft Teams. So there's been a lot going on, and I think an area that you highlighted to me that I think is really important for us to try and focus on is the increased specialization that Microsoft are giving Teams so it can be targeted in different vertical markets.
Yeah, it's quite a different approach to kind of traditional Microsoft. So it used to be kind of the saying was Microsoft would do 80% with their platform and then partners would do the remaining 20%. So they produce SharePoint Server or Skype for Business Server, and then a partner ecosystem would tailor it for finance or tailor it for retail, tailor it for construction, whatever it may be. With kind of the cloud platform, we're seeing Microsoft go aggressively towards serving particular verticals, and two verticals that we were talking about before the pod started are retail, kind of first line workers, and also education. You're seeing Microsoft place specific focus on developing both first party features and also tight interop with key kind of software in those verticals into Teams. So in retail, we've seen Shifts, which is Microsoft's kind of shift management, shift platform. So you can check in and out, check your rota, work with your boss to assign rotas, those kind of things. Microsoft have moved that, which was a separate product in Office 365, directly into Teams. So really targeting a one client experience for comms and kind of management of retail workers or any kind of shift pattern workers directly in Teams.
Yeah, and I interviewed Justin Chando, who's part of the education team at Microsoft, and he was explaining that they've done a very similar thing in education in terms of putting some specific features into Teams that will work for education. That there was a grading platform. They've done some integration with Turnitin, which is the anti-plagiarism software, all designed to really bolster the Teams proposition in an education specific market. So it's quite. Are there any other markets they could potentially go at? So we talked about retail and education. Is there anywhere else where we think Teams is potentially lacking a bit in specific features that they might target going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft have various verticals they focus on. So, like, kind of finance and legal and stuff is another one. And then in each one, I think they're beginning to look at where they can integrate with existing players and add value. Like, education is such an obvious one because they give Teams and the Microsoft stack away to edu pretty much, and obviously there's an incentive there to get people in education, university, using those kind of tools to bring them through to the knowing how they work in the workplace. And first line workers is just such a big opportunity to improve companies. There's a real communications gap between, you know, kind of retail brands and head office and the workers on the ground who have a pulse on what's going on, who are talking to the customers. So I think those have been deliberately the first two, but I'm sure as time goes on, we'll see other markets get a bit of focus.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what areas they think there's scope for targeting. I suppose, as you said, education springs out to me for the reasons that you were explaining there as incredibly important. If you can catch people young on the Microsoft Office stack, then you know they're going to be used to that as they go into later life.
Yeah, and it's a highly competitive area for exactly that reason. Like Apple target it hard, Google target it hard. Everybody wants people through education to know their tools. So when they hit the office, they're like, well, I've always used Hangouts. I want to use Hangouts or Teams or Slack or Apple Stack or whatever it may be. So it's a highly competitive, and it's good for education in the sense that they get a lot of tech thrown at them at reasonable rates. So they have a lot of opportunity to take advantage of 365 for free or extremely cheap, because Microsoft want to support, for the greater good, support education, but also there's a tactical move there for all the vendors.
Yeah, I made that argument. There's a piece on the UC Today website, if you search for Teams and education, where I was saying that is the huge benefit, that they get this massively discounted and a huge amount of investment that Microsoft are putting into. They're doing some work in terms of, I think there's a coding feature that they're gonna integrate as well, which obviously potentially will help schools uncover the Bill Gates of the future, was how I think I ended the article.
Yeah, and if you think about the way particularly university work, but even down lower levels now in education, they're trying to teach students to work for a future that doesn't even exist yet. So it is collaborating together, working as a team, problem solving, like using resources on the internet and using cloud platforms and, you know, AI and all that stuff. Like, you're trying to teach people to learn how to work like that, so when they hit the workplace and they're doing whatever they're doing, they bring the skills forward. So I think Teams in particular, I know from the way, you know, looking way back to when I was at uni, you know, we had group projects where we collaborated, but collaboration was basically like emailing Word docs around and then meeting in person. There was no real async to it. I think Teams, with its file abilities and all the stuff, you know, ability to submit work directly to your tutor, interact with your tutor or your teacher or whatever it may be, does add a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to an interesting story that you brought to my attention that I hadn't been aware of, and that's Teams being installed by default in Office 365 Business Premium propositions. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the naming and terminology is horribly overlapped here. So there's obviously Office 365 as a service, and then there's Office 365 as in your applications on your desktop. So today, when you install the application on the desktop, the Word, the Outlook, the OneNote, etc., it doesn't automatically install Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is an additional separate download.
Right.
And what Microsoft have done with the business and business premium SKUs of Office 365, which are targeted at 300 seats or lower, is they've bundled the Teams application into the desktop apps. So from February, when you install the desktop apps, Teams will get auto installed as well as part of that stack.
Okay, so that's a pretty big move, isn't it? That would seem to have made sense to me from a historical perspective anyway. Why do you think it's only now that Teams is going to be installed as a default?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It tends to be the way Microsoft run these things. So they start at the smaller seat count customers, kind of push things forward, and then move them into enterprise. So a lot more people in enterprise will have opinions about whether they install Teams by default or not, or whether they're ready for it, whether they're still using Skype. Usually at the 100 seat, 300 seat kind of level, more customers will kind of roll with the change. So, I got Teams, I'll start using Teams. It's not a huge change to a 10,000 user org, it's just another option. So we'll see it there first. Undoubtedly, that option will come to Enterprise Edition as well. What was curious is they've done the engineering work to build it into one installer. I'm surprised it's not available as an option to the enterprise plans yet. So I've asked a few questions, but I suspect at some point later in this year, we'll see that option to deploy Teams by default, or even maybe on by default and the option to turn it off in the enterprise editions of Office 365.
And that's a big consideration, isn't it, for an enterprise? Because if potentially you don't want a piece of software, you would want to have the option as whether you have that as the default or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do have the option to turn those individual applications on or off. So there's a XML file, you can turn them on or off depending on what you want to do. Because again, plenty will want Skype for Business and Teams, or Skype for Business or Teams. Another thing that's curious on that note is the Office 365 Business Editions don't at the moment have the ability to add on or bolt on telephony for Microsoft Teams. And it's a really weird one. I can't work out quite why that is. Is it just commercially Microsoft wants customers to step up to a more expensive SKU to get telephony? Are they not ready kind of mass market, have all the 50 seaters on telephony? I can't see why you wouldn't go after that market. So another question I'm asking, that kind of trying to find the answer to, is Microsoft are clearly pushing Teams in the Office 365 business SKUs. When will they unlock telephony in those levels so you can pick up a 50 seat customer and just have all their telephony running in Microsoft's cloud?
Yeah, that will be interesting to know. Detective Tom on the case to find out all the information on that. And we should move on as well to something that we've been talking about for a while in terms of hardware around Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, a lot going on in that space as well. So the first bit of news is the third SBC has been certified for Microsoft Teams. So it's a company called Anynode, and they have a software SBC. So there is no hardware appliance in their model, just straight software. You download it, you put it on your servers, or you put it in Azure, or you put it in AWS or anywhere else. But what's interesting is that's now the third option where you can put the SBC, the session border controller, directly in Azure. And I've had confirmation from Microsoft that that's a fully supported topology. So a customer or a partner can stick the session border controller, or the gateway, the connectivity that is, in a Microsoft's cloud and have 100% cloud solution and bring their own telephony, which is quite a nice option for a lot of customers.
Yeah, I bet it is, and I expect we'll see that to continue. It does take a while, and it's, I suppose, credit to Microsoft, isn't it, that it takes them a while to accredit and fully make sure that these solutions are certified and something they want to endorse. But before we see more, we'll probably see more of that going forward throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. I think it is to their credit, because obviously there's a lot of vendors with a lot of spend. Oracle are still on the pending list, huge company. Microsoft don't just give these stamps out to anybody. You have to go through a certification process, that an outside third party runs that process. You have to meet the spec, and if you don't meet the spec, you get rejected. So same on some of the other hardware we'll talk about in a minute. Until you've got your badge of approval, you are not fully certified by Microsoft, and they have a list on the website of all the people who are certified.
And in terms of that other hardware, we've been talking about this for a little while, and we know they've been coming, and now they're available, which is the first Teams specific phones.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for a long while. They've been in preview for quite a while, but the first two to drop are Yealink and Crestron. So they are fully generally available, certified firmware now for Microsoft Teams. And what's interesting is that hardware is running Android underneath, and those phones can run a Skype for Business load or a Teams load. So some customers will be buying them for day one from Teams, but other customers can get those phones now, run them in Skype for Business mode, and if and when they're ready, flip them to Teams. So this is not just an announcement for Teams customers, but also for Skype for Business customers who are continuing to roll out handsets. You might want to start looking towards these vendors. That there are other vendors coming as well, Polycom around the corner, AudioCodes around the corner. So there'll be more options in the market very soon, and all of them have Skype for Business options and Teams options, which is cool.
And I suppose it's just, again, encouraging that development path, isn't it? Microsoft don't necessarily want to say you must go to Teams, but if you've got the option for both on your hardware, it gives you the best of both worlds, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It gives you the option in the future, which is, rather than using the kind of 3-pip phones for Skype for Business. Now, there is a way to connect those Skype for Business phones to Microsoft Teams via a cloud gateway. So there is an option to kind of extend the longevity of those phones, but the Teams phones will have new abilities built in. They have the Teams UI experience, all the flashy stuff. Come.
Well, I was just going to say, and while we're on that as well, there's you were telling me before as well about the formerly Skype rooms rebranding to Teams as well.
Yeah, so that's the just a rebrand, but again, significant in terms of Microsoft's positioning. So Skype Room Systems, which is the name for Microsoft's certified model for bringing rooms, video endpoints essentially to Teams and Skype for Business. It's for a long while those have supported both Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams, but now the brand name has changed to Microsoft Teams Rooms. So they will still connect to Microsoft Teams meetings or Skype for Business meetings, but the brand has changed. And there are 6 vendors in play that are on that certification. So Logitech, Crestron, Polycom, Lenovo, HP, and Yealink. Yealink is still to be certified, but there will be 6 different vendors there, all with Microsoft Teams rooms that you can connect to either Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, and it's just continuing that theme, isn't it? And we have to say that at previous events, I know Ignite, a lot of these solutions were on show, and some of the IP that they look really good as well. The phones, so they're really smart bits of kit.
Yeah, and then there's new bits and pieces going into those now. So something that's been teased but isn't generally available yet is Bluetooth beaconing, or kind of presence awareness or proximity detection. So in that model, I can roll into a meeting with my laptop on, and via Bluetooth beaconing, it will know I'm in a Teams room and pop up on the laptop screen saying, you've entered a Teams room. Do you want to move your conference to that room? And it will move the conference, and it'll also mute the laptop. So that classic problem that, like, literally just last week I was in a meeting where it was happening, is people join a Teams meeting and then join on their laptop to present content, but don't realize they need to mute off their mic and speakers, and you get that kind of howling or feedback. The product, yeah, the product's going to take care of that for you. It'll be like, well, I know where I am intelligently. There's a room available here. I'll also mute people in the room because I know you're in the room. So this is where we're starting to see some of that investment in Teams and cloud and innovation come through in the rooms.
Oh, well, it's really interesting. I think that's most of it for the news for January. What have you got planned over the next few weeks? Anything big coming up?
Yeah, it's pretty busy actually. So I think the next thing coming up is in February. There's Ignite on tour. So I'm just looking at the dates now. Let's have a look. So I think towards the end of February, there's a Microsoft event in London. Then in March, we've got Enterprise Connect. Yeah, so Ignite on tour is the 26th and 27th of February. So that's based at Excel London, and that's kind of the big Ignite show, but scaled down and taken to all the major cities. So that'll be a good chance to get an update there. And then obviously in March, I think you're at Enterprise Connect. I'll be over at Redmond at MVP Summit, so I won't be at EC, frustratingly, because I'd like to be at both. But I'm sure there'll be lots of news then. But we'll see what February brings. But I think March will be a big news month for us. Yeah,
well, at the end of February, we can catch up after the Ignite Roadshow tour. That'll be really good. And maybe in March, while I'm in sunny Florida, having got a brilliant tan, we could do some sort of cross collaboration from you in snowy Seattle.
Yeah. Well, we're doing more and more videos, so maybe we'll do a video from Redmond campus to Enterprise Connect and cover all the bases.
Sounds good. Well, Tom, as always, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and video.
Yeah, cheers, Patrick. See you again next month.